I have memories of lining up in the kitchen, talking to him on the jail phone call. Like I'd pick up the house phone and it'd be like, boo doo doo. This is a collect call from the such and such state penitentiary. I have those memories. So that's not a dad. Like, like I don't really have a
Yeah.
dad with that.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 218, and today I am speaking with Rashanda. Hi, Rashanda.
Hi, Lily. How are you?
I'm good. I was just speaking with you beforehand, and I want to know more about you being this NBA dancer for how many years were you?
For 12 seasons, so 12 years.
That
It
is
was
so
very, very
fascinating.
fun. Yeah, I was out there in Tennessee for the Grizzlies, actually.
The Grizzlies for 12 seasons. That's amazing. Do you still dance?
I don't. COVID kind of slowed me down, and I moved out of Tennessee and moved back home to California. So I'm kind of just doing some other stuff now. That's all.
I hear you. And we are okay. Oh, you're in California. That's why we had a little bit of the time zone confusion this morning.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are short on time, Rashanda. So we're going to go ahead and get straight into your story. I'm really excited to hear it. I'm sorry it'll be a shortened version, but let's understand more about you. So who was in your family of origin?
Well, my family of origin started with me, my brother, and my sister. We're all 1 year apart. So right now I'm 42, my sister's 43, and my brother's 44.
Oh,
We were taken away from our biological mother when we were really small. I think when I was like 3 or so. And I've not seen her since I was maybe like 10 or so. But my brother and sisters have seen, her since. But I just kind of tiptoe around her. When we moved with my grandmother, my first grandmother, because I have a couple of them. So my first
mhm.
grandmother, who is my brother and my sister's biological grandmother, it's their father's mother, took all three of us. When we went with her, I was so small. I didn't know what was what. I didn't know who was who. I just knew she was my mom. I called her mom because all of her kids called her mom. So we just naturally called her mom as well. I have a different last name for my brother and my sister, but we were not told why. I just figured you could pick whatever name that you could pick as a kid growing up. My brother and sister look exactly like each other. They're the spitting image of their father. And I was like the third one that was doesn't look like really anybody too much, just like favored them. My brother and sister looked exactly alike. So growing up, I kind of had an idea that I was a little bit different because we would go places and their father was very known in the city. So we would go places without him and we people would see the three of us and say, "You're Jerry's kids." But they would be talking to my sister and brother. And they would say, "Yeah, that's our dad." And they would say, "Oh my God, you look just like him." And then they would kind of look at me and be like, and who are you? I was never really, so always just kind of stuck out when it was the three of us. When we moved with our grandmother, it was because my brother and sister's dad went to jail. So there were no parents. It was just the two grandparents and the three kids and, aunts and uncles and stuff. So growing up, like I said, I knew my last name was different, but I didn't really dig into it that much. So fast forward, my grandmother passed away, and we all ended up going with one of her daughters to stay. So I called them air quotes for the sake of the story because it kind of gets confusing because there's so many characters.
Yeah.
So I lived with my air quote aunt and uncle because they were really my brother and sister's aunt and uncle, and I was just a default kid. I didn't have connections with whomever was my biological father. I just didn't even know. They just said, "That's your dad, too." And I went with that, even though I knew I didn't look like them. So you fast forward, and I become an adult, and I moved to Tennessee. Moved to Tennessee, and I needed to get a driver's license. So I go to the DMV, try to surrender my California license, and they said, "Well, we need your birth certificate." So my response back to them was, "Well, I don't have a birth certificate because I was a ward of the court. I was a foster child." During the time that I lived with my grandmother and my air quote aunt and uncle, I had foster people coming to the house because I was technically in foster care because he's not my dad and my mom wasn't in the picture. So I had, social workers coming to the house to check on me, which also kind of made me feel like I was different because the people would come to the house and ask me questions or give me gift cards, and they weren't doing the same thing for my sister and brother. So it's kind of like I kind of had an idea, but I was kind of also just a kid, so I just didn't even know what was going on. So when you fast forward to me going to Tennessee, I need to get this birth certificate. So they tell me how to get the birth certificate. I do an online registration for a birth certificate, and they mail it out to my house. So I open up the birth certificate and I see under father, it's got a person's name. His name said Charles and my last name. So I was like, who in the world is Charles? Like, I've never heard this name in my life. I'm a full grown adult, and this is the first time I've heard this name. So I call my sister in California and I say, "Guess what? I got this birth certificate and there's this guy's name on it. It says Charles." And she says back, "Oh, yeah, we know Charles. He fixes all of our cars." So I'm like confused. I'm like, how do you guys know this guy named Charles? And I don't even know him, and I didn't even know he existed. So I got mad and I stopped talking to my sister for like a couple months because I was irritated. So I look on the internet and I find Charles. I find his auto repair shop. I give him a call and he says, "How can I help you? This is Charles." And I say, "Hi, I was giving you a call because I was going through some documentation and I came across your name and I wanted to find out your relationship to this document." He said, "Sure. What is the document?" And I say, "My birth certificate." So it was a very long, awkward pause. And he goes, "Rashanda?" And I'm like, so this guy knows me too, and I don't know anything. So I'm so irritated. So I have a conversation with him. We chit chat. I tell him about what's going on in my life, and I tell him I'm going to come to visit in California. So a couple months went by, and I flew to California to meet him, and no response. I can't reach him. He like goes
Hmm.
quiet. He goes ghost on me. So I say, that's fine, go back home, continue living life. COVID hits, NBA shuts down. I was also a real estate agent out there, so I couldn't really do anything. And I was feeling like if the world's going to end, I might as well go home and at least be near family. So I moved. I transitioned from Memphis, came back home. The first thing and the most urgent thing on my mind is to find this Charles guy and build a relationship because I felt like I have a son, and I felt like if there's anything I need to know to pass to him, like I should give him that information. So I spend a couple of weeks going by his repair shop, talking to him, having him fix little things on my car. So one day he says to me, it's his birthday, I think. So I went and took him a gift. And when I'm giving him the gift, it was like a gift card for $200 just because I don't even know him. So I didn't know what to get him. So I figured maybe just give him a gift card with money. Well, I gave him the
Wow.
gift card and he was like, he was just looking at it for a while. And then he goes, "I can't take this from you." And I was like, "Well, it's your birthday. It's a gift. He's like, "No, you keep it." So he gave the gift card back to me and said, "I really don't think that you look like me." I really think that you're part of Jerry's family, which is my brother and sister's dad. So I'm irritated because I'm like, now I'm getting rejected by this guy that doesn't, everybody knows him and he doesn't even want to know me. So, and I know for a fact that Jerry was in jail. So I know he's not my dad. So I'm like, you know what? Forget it. Like, I'm just going to table this for a while, which I did. So I found out that we have a little brother. We have actually more siblings that I've never met before, but we're just going to focus on this little brother that I had. This little brother that I had a different father also. So he didn't grow up with us. We met him once or twice and he had one name and then he changed his name to another name and he moved out of the state. So we really couldn't find him, but lo and behold, he surfaces and he was trying to figure out who his father is. The person that he thought was his father, turns out the person passed away and he did a DNA test and it came back that he wasn't his biological father. So the little brother, Anthony, he's distraught and he calls me and says, "Hey, so since the dad I thought was my dad is not my dad, I'm thinking maybe your dad is my dad because we're so similar in age and we look alike. We look like each other more than he looks like my brother Jerry or my sister Renisha. We look alike." So I'm like, that's plausible. I can see that. So he was like, "If I send you a DNA test, will you take the test so I can see if Charles is my dad as well?" So I tell him, "You probably don't want this for a dad because he's not the nicest person." Like after I told him that I wasn't going to take a DNA test, Charles, he was kind of like, just shut me out. Like he removed me from the prayer circle, the group text. So he wasn't the nicest person. And I warned my brother of this, but he was like, "I still want to know. I don't want to know." So he sends the DNA test. I take it. I send it off. So for context, when I was small, when I was a child, I lived at that house with my grandma and my grandpa. And all of their children had children and their children would come by the house and we would play with them. So they're my cousins, my air quote cousins. So when I got the results back from DNA, I looked on the list of, first I looked at the regions where you're from. I'm like, "Oh, this is neat, whatever." So then I go to the matches. I have two matches. My brother, that's on there because obviously we have the same mom, but I didn't see any connection to Charles on there. I'm looking through all these people and I don't know who any of these people are, but I don't see anybody with Charles's last name or my original last name, which is kind of confusing. So I took a screenshot of the matches and I sent it to one of my cousins and said, "Can you explain this to me? Because I don't really see what I'm looking at." So one of the names, the second person that I had matched, it had a name. It was a Spanish name, which doesn't really make sense because I know I don't have any. I mean, there's some Portuguese in my regions, but there's no straight up Spanish anything in my DNA. But I see the picture that's connected to this Spanish name. And I know the person on the picture. It's one of my air quote cousins. So I'm like, well, why would she be on my list with a fake name on my DNA matches? So I send this picture to my cousin and I ask her, "Can you explain this? Like, why do I see this girl? This girl's name is Portia." I said, "Why do I see Portia on my list? That's my air quote cousin." So my cousin tells me, "Pull over in the car. You need to be, you don't need to be driving when you hear this information." So I pull over and I look and she says, "Well, it says on there that she's your sister." And I'm like, "There's no way that she's my sister with a fake name." I'm like, "This must be some confusion." So I send a screenshot of her, to Portia, and say, "Hey, sis," in a lighthearted way, kind of to try to like make her laugh so we can figure this out together. And she says, "Well, why are you calling me sister? I'm not your sister." And I'm like, "Well, I did this DNA test." She's like, "I have to go." She hung up on me. So I was confused. So I called my sister and I'm like, how is it possible that Portia's on my list of matches? And she's like, well, that must mean her dad is your dad. So I'm
Mm.
like, my sister and brother's dad, his name is Jerry also. So he's a senior. His cousin, he has cousins. So Portia's father is Jerry's cousin, first cousin. So
Mm.
I'm confused at this point. Like, how is it that she's on my list if we're not even blood related? So I ask another person and they say, oh, well, you're in foster care. So that's why she's popping on your list. And I'm like, well, that doesn't even really make sense because she has a fake name. So how could her fake name be attached to my blood DNA? So I contact a DNA angel because I don't know what I'm looking at this point. Portia's mother gets upset and calls my sister and curses her all the way out and says, stop spreading rumors. Rashanda needs to find her own dad. Portia knows who her dad is, and our family's not accepting new applications. So I contact this DNA angel. I also, the time I spent in Tennessee, I had second air quote cousin who was really close to me. Her name is Kelly. The whole time I was in Memphis, she always looked out for me. I knew Kelly growing up, but she was like an older cousin. She's my brother and sister's dad. That's his cousin as well. So growing up, I knew who she was. I see her all the time. She always very nice to me. She always was very loving. And when I moved to Tennessee, she found me there and we linked up and did holidays and stuff together because she was the only family I had out there. So she's a great person. So when I reached out to her and told her what happened, she's like, I knew it. I knew you were related to us. You act too much like my mom. You act this, you do this, you do that. So she says, I'm going to take the DNA test to prove that this is right because everybody else was saying I was making this up. DNA tests aren't real. All of this is just a hoax. They thought I was making stuff up. I don't know what they thought, but the whole family completely was like, she's lying. So Kelly takes the test. Kelly is Portia's aunt also. So
Mm.
Portia's dad and my biological father, his name is Leon. Kelly is Leon's sister. I think I sent you a picture of all these kids and their mom together. It's like a whole bunch of kids. When my grandmother moved from St. Louis to San Diego, her and her sister both moved to San Diego and had all their kids, and all their kids all hung out with each other because they're all close in age, so they were just like a big best friend group. When Jerry went to prison, his girlfriend, who was my mom, moved with his mother, the same mother that I lived with, but obviously years apart. She stayed at the house with his mother, and his little brother, whose name is Chris, would hang out with my mom. Chris would hang out with her, and so would Leon. So obviously, like, that's where I came into play because they would be hanging
Yeah.
out together all the time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Kelly used to babysit my brother and sister so that they could go party together. So she's
Mm.
like, I knew something was up because your mom used to be with my brother all the time when Jerry was in jail. And then she popped up pregnant. So she takes the DNA test for me. I didn't really, I knew that wasn't really going to do very much because she's a woman, so that's not going to really prove very much except for that we're connected. So she took the test and it turned out that she's my aunt.
Mm.
So Leon has a brother named Tony. So I say to them, okay, Kelly is obviously my aunt. So one of you guys has to be my dad. And it's saying on the test that Portia's my dad. So Leon, you must be my dad. Well,
Yeah.
Leon kept saying, no, I was in the army. I was in Italy during the time. Like, there's no way. So Tony says, I had sex with your mother. You're my daughter.
Oh,
So I say to Tony, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But that means that you're Portia's dad too. Because it says she's
right?
my sister, like we cannot avoid the fact that she is the one that I'm linked to, and it says she's my sister. So Tony comes out that Tony did mess with my mom, and he was all over the place. We'll just say that he was all over the place. So I asked him, well, can you take a DNA test so that I can see if you're my dad? He's like, no, I'm not taking that. I don't believe in DNA tests. They're fake and this and that. So I was at a dead end again. So his daughter, her name is Nikki, she says, I'll take a test for you. Because clearly, if I'm your cousin, comes back you're my cousin, then that means it's Leon. And if it comes back that you're my sister, then that means Tony's my dad and Portia's dad,
Yeah.
right? So Nikki takes the test. It comes back that I'm her cousin. So we're back to Leon.
Yep.
He just refuses to admit that he's my father. Like, he blocked me from social media. And mind you, the whole time I was in Tennessee dancing and doing what I was doing for the Grizzlies, they would send me messages, him and his wife, Leon and his wife Sherry. They would send me messages on Facebook like, we're so proud of you, which was really weird to me, might I add, because they were my air quote cousins. So I
Yeah.
was kind of always like, why are you guys watching me? Not like that, but like that. Like, I don't know how everybody feels about like adopted children or foster children. In my mind, if I had a cousin who had a foster child at young ages, and if this foster child was like 5 and I was like 25, I'm not really, at some point, we're going to go different paths and we're probably just going to miss each other a little bit. But
Yes.
they made it a point to keep in my life. They would send me messages. We're so proud of the woman that you've turned into. You're so successful. We're so proud of you and this and that. And I would respond back, obviously, like, thanks, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to them because they were not even my family. So I just kind of let it be what it was. Well, Leon's mother, who was my air quote aunt growing up, she's still living, and she's the sweetest person in the world that you can ever meet. She really is. When I was growing up, I always had this draw to her. I lived with her sister, which was my grandma slash mom. I lived with her, but whenever Aunt Martha would come over, I would be beside myself. I would just want to stare at her. I would want to like show her, look, I can do a cartwheel. Look, I can do this. I just had this fascination with her. And the same with Kelly. When Kelly would come by, she would wear fake nails, like acrylic nails, and I would watch her out the window. Like, I had this really weird obsession with these people that I shouldn't have had because I was like, they're not even my family. But it turns out Martha is really my grandmother. And Kelly is really my aunt. And Portia, same thing. I would keep up with her over the years. My brother and sister, this is their blood cousin. They didn't even keep up with these people over the years. But I would, all the way from Tennessee, and they all lived in California. But I always had them in my mind. I always prayed for these people and was, just listening, checking in with other people. Hey, how's Portia? How's her little brother? How's, Aunt Martha? Just to check. And she would send me cards to Tennessee for holidays, like Happy Easter. And I would be like, she's so nice. I just thought she was so nice for doing that. But then once I got the DNA test and I figured out the relationship between all of these people, I kind of feel like they already knew. They already knew that I was their biological something, whatever it is, niece.
Mm.
I just kind of feel like that now. When I lived in Tennessee and me and Kelly would go places for holidays, we would go visit family members like in St. Louis or in Atlanta. Whenever we would get there, they would say, "Well, who is this?" And Kelly would say, "This is my niece." But she was really, at the time, she was my air quote second cousin. So I would always pull her to the side and say, "You keep calling me your niece, but I'm not your niece. That would mean that one of your brothers is my dad, and they're not. So you keep on calling me that, but you have to remember I'm your little
Mm.
cousin. I'm not your niece." And she, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Well, once I found out she really was my aunt, I was like, "Is this the genetic mirroring situation, or is it because you just knew I was your brother's child that you're calling me this by mistake, and that you're keeping up with me and breaking your neck to bend over backwards to help me with little situations and stuff?" Like, it just seems like a lot of love for somebody that is an air quote second cousin, you know? So
Yeah.
so since then, I'm still blocked. Leon doesn't talk to me. I send him messages frequently from like text numbers and my cell phone and emails and direct messages. He like won't talk to me, which is the weirdest thing. And I mean, I guess I kind of understand it because his wife doesn't want it to look like he has another daughter. She wants to keep her family like their little family, because her, it's Sherry and Leon. They're married and they have two children, Portia and little Leon. So I guess she wants to keep that little family together. But I was born before they were ever married.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm
What's the
just baffled.
problem?
Like, what is the problem? And you know who I am. You've known who I was since I was a baby. We even worked before I moved to Tennessee. I worked at AAA while I was going to college, and the call center, like the dispatch call center, and she worked there too. And every day she would run around telling people, "This is my little cousin. This is my little cousin." And I'd be like, "Please stop telling people that because you're a little crazy." But
Mm.
so you know who I am. It's not like I'm an addition to the family. I've been here the entire time. But because she doesn't want to let me in, Portia doesn't want to let me in. And her little brother talks to me like just through Instagram, but it's kind of, I don't want to say it's like a hidden relationship that we have, because he will like things or put a little post underneath a picture or something like that. But as far as us actually like meeting up, I've tried to reach out to like link up with him, but it just hasn't happened yet. So I don't know what would change the situation. It's it's disheartening because it's hard to talk about the situation with the family members that I have, that I am close with, which is like my sister and brother. My sister's like, "You don't need that family. Who cares about them? I'm your sister. You don't need another sister." She's kind of like that. So I can't really tell her how I feel about the situation because it just hurts her feelings. Then her dad, I'm close with him, and he calls me his daughter. He's got my name tattooed on his arm. Whenever he addresses me, he says, "Hey, daughter." So it's kind of like I kind of feel bad trying to press a relationship with his cousin when he doesn't want one, and he wants to be my father. And that's
Mm.
great. That's terrific, and it's appreciated. But I kind of just want to be in the family that I'm supposed to be in. Like, I want people to accept that I had no control over what happened back then. I'm just figuring out the pieces. I do feel like a lot of them already knew, because there was not a lot of shock on people's faces when I talked to them about it and told them the results and showed them the results. Most people were not gasping with shock at all. I was the only one like, "So what's going on?" And they're like, "Oh," and they just leave it alone. So I
Mm.
kind of feel like stopped when it comes to like moving forward, because, like I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Everybody was always nice to me, but it was not, it's all built on a lie. And like I said, I have a son. My son looks just like Leon to me. Obviously, he looks like me and his dad, but I see Leon all over his face. My son is an active duty Navy seaman, and that military. They both have a picture. I have a picture of them both in military uniform, and it's uncanny. And it's very hurtful because like I have a whole son that is amazing that these people are just like missing out on. They don't even want to get to know him. And then Leon Jr. has a daughter, and I'm an amazing auntie. When I tell you, all the nieces and nephews that I have love me to death. I am the best auntie. Like, I'm going to remember your birthday. I'm going to come through on Christmas. I'm going to do all of the things that auntie's supposed to do. And I don't even get to do that with this little girl. Like, I see pictures of her and I'm just like, I go to birthday parties and stuff, and I'm always just like, I have a whole entire niece that will grow up thinking, I mean, because eventually she'll figure out that I'm her aunt, and she'll be like, where were you at for the first 10 years or so of my life? Like, you just weren't there. And I don't want that. She's probably like 5 right now, so I could still like ease in and be a great
Yeah.
auntie to her too. But if nobody lets me do it, then I'm kind of like at a standstill. And I've asked questions to some family members to try to get a little bit of understanding as to why they're so guarded against me. And one person told me that Leon, Leon's father, who is the original Leon Sr., when he passed away, he left a lump sum of money to his first grandchild. And it wasn't me. I was not left a lump sum of money because I was not a known grandchild. And so the person that got the lump sum of money is Portia. And I don't know if they think I'm trying to like take money from them. I don't know. The story's not been verified, but that would make a little sense, as to why she doesn't want me to be the first, because she feels like I'm going to want something. But in all actuality, I don't want anything from any of them at all. Nothing monetary. Like, I just want to continue being in the family. When I was an air quote cousin, air quote niece, air quote daughter, air quote all of these things, at least I had a family.
Yep.
It was confusing, but I was like, shoot, these people raised me, so they're my family. It'd be embarrassing when people would say, well, you look just like, this person. And I'm like, that's not really my cousin. That's not really my uncle or my aunt, and actually they were like the people, my grandmother that raised us, she's actually my great aunt. And I would look at her sometimes and say, wow, we have the same chin. We have the same skin. We have the same this, the same that. But I knew she wasn't really my grandmother. So I was like, well, I'm just making stuff. I'm looking for things to be similar, and
Yeah.
even when I look at Portia, I had a picture of Portia like many, many years ago when I was in Tennessee. I, I was with a man that I was dating, and I came across a picture of Portia, and I said, "Oh wow, look, my little cousin, look at this picture of her." And he was like, "Wow, she looks just like you." But I was thinking in my head, like, there's no way she looks just like me because she's not even my real cousin. She's my air quote cousin, but I didn't ever say anything to him because it was embarrassing to have to go back through, well, what happened? Well, how, I just never really elaborated on it. I just left it alone. And then now it turns out she really is my sister. And when I look at the picture of the two of us, I'm like, wow, we really do. Like, I look like the older version of her.
And you sent me these pictures.
Yes.
And Rashanda, you also is it Martha is your your true biological grandma. Is that true?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And that's okay, that's Leon's mom.
Yes.
Oh, she is beautiful,
Isn't she the
and so
cutest?
are you. Oh my gosh, like,
Oh,
yes,
thank you.
that's definitely your family. I can
Yeah.
see the
And in that
resemblance.
same picture, there's a picture of me, my grandmother, and as a third woman that's in the picture, and
Yes.
she has all white hair. That is Leon's other sister. So Kelly and Leon's sister, her name is Cheryl.
Wow.
When I did the DNA test, Cheryl was the first person to say that I was lying. She's the first person that was like, "This is absolutely not true." He was in Italy. He was nowhere around. She's making this up. She said all these things about it not being true. But I also sent you a picture. It's a split screen picture of her high school graduation picture and my high school graduation picture. And when I tell you, when I opened up the app and I clicked on her high school picture, I literally thought it was me. I was like,
I'm gonna say, like, you have her eyes. You like,
we
what? This is
the only thing that's different is our nose. Like I think I have my mom's nose, but everything, even just if you look at the smirk on my face, when I smile, when I'm just doing a regular just smile, that's that smirk right there. And she has the exact same smirk, and so does Portia. When when Cheryl came to San Diego, my grandmother moved to Mississippi to live with Cheryl, because she's just getting older in age. And when Cheryl, that day of that picture, Cheryl came down to pick up Martha to take her. And before Martha left, I wanted to give her a hug and a kiss because she's older, and I don't know when I'll be in Mississippi again. So I went to go see her. And as soon as Cheryl saw me, a tear fell because she was like, "I'm sorry." Because I think she looked at me and was like, "Okay, clearly, clearly you look like me when I was 40." So
yes,
she
yeah.
gave me a hug and embraced me, and she gave me her telephone number, and I check on her from time to time. She doesn't really say all that stuff anymore that I hear about me not really being. I think she saw me in real life and saw the picture of the three of us together, and I think it just kind of hit her that way. But nobody, one thing that does really bother me is that there's a handful of people who understand DNA, and they see no matter what, if I look like them or if I don't look like them, they're smart enough to know, look at this evidence and say, okay, clearly she's in this family. But these people don't put Leon to the fire. Like, they just let him ignore me. And I don't understand that part, because if my brother had a child, oh, I'm all over him like white on rice. Did you talk to your
Yep.
daughter today? Where's your daughter at? And if it's I can't because of my wife, I would be telling him that makes no sense. Like, what are you doing? I wouldn't be
Mm.
sending happy birthday messages on social media. I would be more like defensive for that child. But nobody really does that. Nobody.
That's such a good point. Where are the people holding their loved ones accountable, putting a mirror to their face? I hear this so many times. I'm where where these people they'll be estranged, no contact. It's like, yes, why aren't there loved ones and best friends and spouses holding
Right.
them accountable,
And
right? Or siblings?
even with
Yes.
the spouse, even if you're thinking about the children, like, I can't really speak to it because I've never had a mom and dad, but I feel like if I had a mom and dad and we found out that this person is their daughter, I feel like I would be like, "Dad, stop playing. Like, what are we doing? Like, I have a whole entire sister and we're not talking to her. Why aren't we talking to her? You don't believe it? Well, let's take a test. Let's take a DNA test.
Mm.
Let's do a sibling test. I would be more forward about this relationship than anybody's being. Everybody's like, he doesn't want to talk about it, so we're just not going to talk about it. Happy birthday, though, Leon. Merry Christmas, Leon. And I'm just like, why does he get to enjoy the benefits of a family and I don't? And I had no choice in this. He has a choice. I don't
Yeah.
have a choice. Like, so I'm just left with Charles doesn't want to be my dad. He doesn't even want to be. I'm not even in the prayer circle anymore. You can kick me out the prayer circle, which I think is
He
crazy. Like,
he kicked. He kicked you out of the prayer circle.
Yes. After he figured out that Leon was my dad, like there was a prayer circle. He would send messages literally every morning, like with a prayer and stuff like that. And once he figured that out, like once I told him Leon was my father, he eliminated me from the prayer circle. He didn't talk to me
Oh,
anymore. So I like lose the idea of a father that comes up from my birth certificate. Then I've got my dad that was in jail, who was in jail like for my whole time growing up. Like I have a relationship with him now, but it's been since I was like 30, 35 or something like that. You know, like so our relationship starts there and goes forward. So it's not like I don't feel like I don't want to say I don't feel like he's my dad, but he didn't raise me.
yeah.
So, you know how some people will have a birth father and then the father that raised them. I don't
Yep.
have, he didn't raise me. So it's not like I have memories. I have memories of when he was out of jail and then when he would go back to jail. And then I have memories of lining up in the kitchen talking to him on the jail phone call. Like I'd pick up the house phone and it'd be like, boo doo doo. This is a collect call from the such and such state penitentiary. I have those memories. So that's not a dad. Like, you know, like I don't really have a
Yeah.
dad with that. And then I have my air quote aunt and uncle who took me after our grandmother passed away, but that's her husband. So it's like she's my air quote cousin, but now she's my air quote aunt, and her husband took care of us. He's not technically my dad. He didn't raise me. I mean, he raised me from like 14, 15 to 17, 18 when I moved out. But that doesn't, I don't, you know, like I don't have those fuzzy memories with like one
Yeah.
person. So it feels it feels disrespectful for me to want to have a dad because I feel like I've never had a dad. It feels disrespectful to say that because there are people who want me to call them my dad, but they weren't my father. You know, like but they
Yeah.
want to believe that they're that role for me, but I wanted and needed more. I needed
Yes.
more than just telephone calls to jail. The part that hurts the most is 100% about my son, because him when he grew up, his childhood, he didn't have grandma, grandpa on my side. He had that on his father's side, but when it would come to me, he would ask me like, well, where's your mom? Where's your dad? Where are your uncles and aunts? You know, and I never had anything to provide to him. And now that I found out the truth, these people still don't want to reach out. The only person that reaches out to my son is Kelly, because she's just a really good person, you know? And it feels like I gave him half of what he needs. And now that I have it, I still can't give him grandparents. You know, like he has a great grandmother.
Yeah.
Martha is his great grandmother. But out of respect for her son, she doesn't really want to get too involved with me, like beyond what the relationship we have. You know, it doesn't extend to my son.
I'm sorry. I wish better for you and for your son, especially because these people are still living.
Right.
They could have a relationship with you and your son. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And I hope maybe the tables will turn at some point.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't foresee it, but I gotta
I'm
just
right there with you.
go with what I got. Go
I'm
ahead.
I'm I'm like, well, the door's not locked. I don't see it changing, but yeah, if I'll be here if circumstances change, but yeah, I guess it's acceptance for where you're at and where people are at right now.
Yeah,
As icky as it is.
absolutely.
Rashanda, I'm sorry to cut this short, but I did want to ask if people wanted to know more about your story or if they wanted to reach out to you, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
What would be the best way to get in touch with you?
They can send an email to my email address. It's Rashanda, last name lawyer, All one word, RASHANDALAWYER
I'll put the link for your email address down below, rashandalawyer@gmail.com.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing. And maybe if I can get your permission, I could post a picture. I certainly won't without your permission.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so good talking to you today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Lily.
These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come, heal with us.